All right, folks. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Look at that fine looking gentleman there. Oh, brought to you by Twitwear. That's what I do. Yeah, baby. I like it too. Looks good, as you can see. Yeah, buddy, I like that one. You know, this show is brought to you by Twitwear. Welcome this morning, 8:01 in the morning on the 15th of November 2023. Thanks for tuning in to see me. My name is Doug Rice. This is the Doug Rice Show, brought to you exclusively by Twitwear, so you know. All right, I do like that. What do you think of this one? Oh, baby. Yeah, I do like this. I like this style. All right. Welcome, one and all. Know you are standing tall for today's instruction. Today, and again, welcome. Thanks so much. What can I say? Please be sure to like, subscribe. If you can endure, go ahead and hit the notification bell. And I heard that the notification bell don't work so well. So, notification bell to go down. I don't know. As far as I know, YouTube has shadow banned me. As far as I know, these other platforms have not done much to get the word out and such. But the Doug Rice Show is taking some steps. That's right. I am putting the work in. That's what I'm doing. And I'm going to develop the DougRiceShow.com. And that is where all of my shows will be posted. There are going to be some unfiltered shows as well, some uncensored shows. There's going to be some freestyling. We're going to have a great time. I think I'm going to reserve that space for some guests, maybe some folks that want to come on. But I do appreciate you here with me this morning. Again, if I might say, look at that. Good Lord, look at that. That is all Twidwear, baby. That is the Twid, and so is this. You like this one? Now, I had a fear that you couldn't see the Twidwear there, but you can. All right, so good morning. All praises to the Most High God, creator of all things and God of the Negroes. That's right. True Hebrews, one and all, draw yourselves near. Come on over here. Let me have your ear. We're going to be talking about some stuff. We're going to be talking about the things they won't teach your children in school so that you might pass on this information to them. You know, I am not opposed that you have your child sit in front of any of my videos and just have them watch. Why not? I think we offer your children a lot. And remember, most of what we talk about on the show will never be taught to them in school, so you know. And if they're trying to hold back the information, that means it's much required information for the Negro Nation. We have to know what they don't want us to know. And I always predicate what I'm doing with the understanding that they never intended for Negroes to read. They never, I need you to hear me carefully. They never wanted us to read, the simple act of consuming information they kept at arm's length from the Negro Nation. And there was a reason for that. Because reading leads to knowing leads to thinking leads to understanding, and understanding might lead to reprimanding. And they don't want that. So thank you so much for showing up to the show. And though we are sponsored, we are all struggling as Negroes, all of us. And so I always recommend that you not only support TWID as the sponsor of the show, but if you want to give to the Doug Rice Show, just so you know, you can do that as well down below. TWID is my representation as well as I am his. I represent the TWID brand. He represents the Doug Rice Show. So all of the money flows in all directions, you know. We're trying to keep our heads above water before we get out of here. So I do appreciate you being here. Again, this is Doug Rice Show. You know, one of the things I noticed in the news today is they have proof. Let me explain. The Israelis have proof of what is going on in the hospitals in Israel. And I mean hard, cold evidence. Some of it could be staged, some of it absolutely. But for the most part, it's pretty evident that Hamas is using the hospitals, that the hospital staff are probably in league with Hamas. How could you not have some sort of psychological or emotional attachment to what's happening to the very people that you're caring for? But no one believes them. I mean, the vast majority of the world does not believe what Israel is presenting as proof for the actions that they're taking. And I, for one, am kind of tongue-in-cheek making an observation that, wow, they can't seem to get proof in front of the nations. Isn't that frustrating? Isn't that frustrating when you have proof of a thing, Israel? Isn't it frustrating that you have proof that a thing is? And no matter how many times you show, all you do is get the biz, right? Yeah, welcome to the world of Negroes. Because we got proof too. We got proof. You won't accept our proof, and now they won't accept yours. How does it feel? The irony I can't ignore. All right, folks, that was that opening salvo, just so you know. I like that they have proof. I don't care about either side, okay? Because we know regarding Negroes where their mentality resides. We know. So there's no reason to put on a show of support for either Palestine or Israel. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're both culpable. They're both conspirators in the conspiracy to put Negroes into slavery. So I guess it's just going to come off the rails for those folks. All right, there we go. Today's lesson, today's study, today's reading involves I think a little known topic in its detail. I think that getting into the weeds of what happened and what occurred during this event, I think is a very interesting thing we may need to hear. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to first share my screen with you. Yeah, buddy, let's keep going. This is what we're talking about, folks. This is an interesting read. Now, this is, I think, exactly what you need. Now, the title of this show, The Tuskegee Experiment, Clinical Investigation. But the full title of this is The Tuskegee, whoa, go back, Doug. The Tuskegee Experiment, Clinical Investigation, right? The study of untreated syphilis in the Negro Male. The study of untreated syphilis in the Negro Male. Good Lord. The title gives away the plot, right? But we're going to read and see what else they've got, because this was prepared by Otis W. Brawley. Now look, Otis gotta be a brother. I cannot imagine a white man named Otis with an MD behind his name. A white man named Otis would probably be of farming fame. I'm sorry, I just thought it would sound nice. But Otis, we'll assume that Otis W. Brawley is a brother. All right, we'll just say that he's a Negro, because I don't know, I just think so. We're going to read over this, as this was prepared by the Office of Special Populations Research. Federal Building, Suite 312, National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. Now, this came out, the copyright for this is in 1998. We'll probably get the study date before it's too late. But let's read first the purpose. The participation of minorities in clinical studies is the subject of much discussion and has even become the subject of federal law. The project, known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study and officially titled the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male, is one of the great debacles of American medicine and a national shame. Despite the fact that its existence is well known, many do not know the historical facts of the study nor the context of the study. My purpose, Dr. Otis W. Brawley, MD, his purpose here is to recount the facts of the study and its historical context. Now, let me pause before we see what's next. Here's the issue. I thought he might be grabbing a tissue to make some kind of absolvement of this issue, but I don't think that's where he comes from. I'm learning to read ahead a little bit because, well, it's a prudent move, but I still don't get the surprise that I read, neither will you. You shouldn't lose that. So I wanted to say that. It's not an apologist letter by any means. I did look ahead, so I wanted you to know that. And here's more of what we'll read. Here we go. All right. Methods. The history recounted here is taken from documents gathered during a U.S. Senate investigation of the study. Original papers located in National Library of Medicine and books about the trial. Results. The trial began in 1931 as a survey of the natural history of untreated territory syphilis in Black men. This study enrolled 399 men with syphilis and 201 uninfected men to serve as control. All were at least 25 years old at enrollment. The men were told they were in a study, but never educated about the implications. Now, y'all need to hear that. This is the regard that they have for Negro maleness in this country to this very day. But now it may have transferred to Negro females with the advent of the HELOC gene, which is, I think, a contributory reason why so many of our Negro women go missing each year. But let's continue. I want to hear what else he has to say. Dear God. All right. So later, men were not informed that there was a effective treatment for their disease. Whoa. A treatment that was being withheld from them. And this trial continued until 1972. Now, understand the ramifications of that statement. 1972. Most of us think about the Tuskegee trials as having happened in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, but this trial didn't stop until the 70s. 1972, Nixon administration. Some of you were born, some of you were not. I was. And I just need the details of the result here. So they were told that they were in a study, but they were never educated about the implications of syphilis. And we'll find those implications in the reading, I'm sure. Later, they were not informed that there was a treatment for effective treatment for their disease. Well, Negro, please. And the treatment was being withheld from them. Yeah, this sets the tone, sets the stage. I don't know, it sets me to rage, but let's see what's on the page. Conclusion, many of the issues that led to the study and caused it to continue for 40 years, still exist. You need to hear that. Many of the issues that led to the study, and caused it to continue for 40 years still exist. The lessons of the public health study of untreated syphilis in the untreated Negro includes the danger of paternalism, arrogance, blind loyalty, and misuse of science. Those who do not appreciate history are condemned to repeat it. All right, so now we get a foundation for what we are about to read. And again, this may be precisely what Negroes need. We need the education of what occurred with us. It helps springboard our mental state out of this country and prepare us for the exodus we must all face. That's a decision that's going to be made by Negroes. I need you to understand that the second exodus won't be mandatory. Oh, there's a whole lot more to the story, but the second exodus is going to be a choice. And so many of you will choose to stay. You hear my voice. What this is, I think, is an exercise in all that's needed to leave. I think everything we need to know about this place, we should believe. So we're going to get into this. I need you to lock this in your psyche, what they done to Negroes, and not rightly. Let's do it, folks, because we're going to get into this. Here we go. Like, subscribe, share. Syphilis, minorities, blacks, and clinical trials. We're going to be on this page a while. Introduction. When we think of the Tuskegee Institute, first thing we should think of is its rich history. Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, and the Tuskegee Airmen. First thing we think of should not be the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. Indeed, the study officially titled The Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. You know, they keep calling us Negro. You know, it stinks, doesn't it? It's royalty. Should be referred to as the U.S. Public Health Service study of untreated syphilis in the Negro Male. So that's how he feels it should be referred to. Remember, this is a written essay. So my purpose here is to recount the facts of the study in its historical context. Unfortunately, the facts of what truly happened from 1931 to 1972 are widely misunderstood. Rumor and prejudice have replaced fact, a situation that has been made worse by the recent home box office film entitled Miss Evers' Boys. This television movie, which was billed as fiction based on a factual event, certainly deviated from the truth. Despite this deviation, it is largely viewed as fact and not the fiction that it is. Finally, incomplete and inaccurate news coverage has obscured what really happened. Now, as I read ahead, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I too felt that this, I'm assuming Negro, Dr. Otis W. Bradley, I could be wrong. Somebody look him up, tell me if he's a Negro. If he's not, then the whole view might be slanted, but that's what I've got. But, you know, I felt that he began an apologist essay on what happened to Negro men, but reading through it again and again, I found that there was some attack toward the facts and regarding any defense. So let me not make any pretense. I don't know how this goes. And you remember I said so. So let's continue reading. All right. So The history recounted here is taken from a review of documents gathered during the U.S. Senate hearings and investigation in 1972. Original papers located in the National Library of Medicine of the book Bad Blood by James Jones. This history is conveyed through the eyes of an African-American physician who has designed and conducted clinical trials. As I recount the history, I will attempt to discern established fact from interpretation. It is my belief that the lessons of the PHS syphilis study are numerous. Now, I won't deny at all that there were lessons learned by this study. Let's not be completely obtuse to, what I'm sure was valid use of Negro, essence to teach them lessons, right? But intertwined in that use, in that purpose, in that valid dissemination, and all the information they got from putting this to a Negro nation. Well, the fact that they didn't tell them what was happening, the fact that they withheld, the cure. I mean, the rest of this just sounds like aromatic manure. So I don't want you to get in any of your feelings about, what we might be reading here. I think this might be an attack on the investigation. So there's no telling where we might get this information. I'll read more and we'll see what's in store. Hold on, folks. All right, so the lessons apply not only to those of us who conduct clinical trials, but to literally everyone involved, in any aspect of medicine. These lessons apply to the counseling of and the informing of the lay public by medical professionals and lay advocates. Many of the individuals who supported or helped conduct this tragic study likely deceived themselves into believing that they were doing the right thing. See how it takes a turn goes? Come on, guys. The first lesson involves the obligation of those of us who take a leadership role in the delivery of health care to learn and understand medicine ourselves. The second lesson involves the obligation of healthcare providers and advocates to go beyond merely informing to teaching. Patients must understand the ramifications of a decision and freely choose to participate in a study or accept healthcare. And let me just dovetail that in with the show I did with Mr. Sanders, Jason Sanders, RN, 20 years. He discussed the perils of the healthcare system involving Negroes handing our cells and bodies over to these individuals. And I highly recommend that you go take a look at it. It's about 17 minutes long, just a few days ago. Jason Sanders and I talked about these very issues. And I can only imagine, had something like this been discussed involving what occurred with these men, from 1931 to 1972, that's a long time to give Negroes a deadly disease and not tell them the effects, not offer a cure. And I'm assuming the dovetail date 72 coinciding with the investigation is the only thing that stopped this from happening in the Negro nation. So if you like this show, do me a favor, go ahead and give to the edifices below, and please do so. All right, let's continue. Like, subscribe, share. The American South in the 1920s. The context of the times is important to the history of the study. In the late 1920s, a number of survey studies suggested that over 35% of Black men in the rural South were infected with syphilis. These surveys suffered from selection biases that likely magnified the estimates. The conclusions of these studies were widely publicized by concerned parties and organizations in an effort to force public health officials to do something. The limits of and potential selection biases of the studies were not widely disclosed. At this time, race medicine was still widely accepted in the United States. Central to the race medicine was the belief that blacks were different from whites and that a disease could have differing effects on blacks versus whites. Again, folks, just pausing and just referring back to our show. I'm so happy it's poignant. Just so you know, the same question I asked Mr. Sanders' show was, is there a difference in our physiology, in our physical makeup that causes a direct change, a positional change in how they approach us, medicinally? I don't know. But it appears that they used that summation, they used that predilection of belief to begin these kinds of experiments, not to our relief. So let's continue. Interesting. So there was considerable belief that syphilis was a more indolent disease in blacks than in whites. It was noted that many blacks had syphilis and few were dying of it. This argument and the fiscal limitations of the Depression made it even easier for federal, state, and local public health officials to ignore the problem of syphilis in blacks. Now, did they ignore the problem, or were they paying attention to the fact that they did not die from the disease? Tell me what you think about that in chat, if you don't mind. I mean, do you think that they were concerned about our well-being? Give me a 1 if you think that they were concerned with our well-being, but give me a 2 if you think there was a slight interest in how they were able to survive the disease, because it says right there, they took note of that. It was noted that many blacks had syphilis and few were dying of it. So 1, if you think they were concerned with our well-being. 2, if you think they took note of the fact of our resilience toward the disease. Let's continue. Interesting. The common therapies for syphilis at the time were difficult to administer, expensive, painful, and dangerous. The efficacy of these therapies are, arsphenamide, that's it. It's arsphenamide, bismuth, and mercurial compounds were and still are debated within the medical community. Importantly, there were the accepted treatments of the time. Few American blacks were treated for syphilis because medical care was expensive. Indeed, most Southern Negroes, being poor, had never seen a physician for any reason. My God, that is amazing. In the 1920s and 1930s, the discipline called public health was relatively new. The Division of Venereal Diseases of the United States Public Health Service was comprised of a group of committed young public health physicians. The PHS teamed with representatives of several charitable foundations and began treating blacks for syphilis in several sites in the southern USA. These activities were to demonstrate that both logistically and medically difficult and anti-syphilis treatments could be administered to rural blacks. They were to demonstrate that both logistically and medically, the difficulty, that's what it should have said, the difficulty in treatments. I shouldn't rewrite his paper. One of the demonstration projects was in Macon County, Alabama, home of the Tuskegee Institute. Macon County was rural, more than 80% black, like a petri dish. The poor living conditions of Macon County were startling to the PHS officers. Chronic malnutrition and other diet-related illnesses such as pellagra were common. One PHS officer, Warren Thomas Parn, was later become the U.S. Surgeon General, wrote about the poverty of Macon County in his book, Shadow on the Land. The demonstration project started in 1930 and was terminated in just over a year due to insufficient funds, with many people having received an incomplete course of therapy. So again, they're laying a foundation. They talk about the time, they talk about who was involved. They have the venereal diseases of the U.S. Public Service, comprised of a group of committed young public physicians. Now, the question becomes is, During that time, 1920, there were a rare few of white men and people that may have given 2 3/5 damn about a Negro. I don't know. But, you know, when you are assigned by the federal government to accomplish a task, you don't really know how long that task might last. And you're amongst individuals who in your past you haven't been associating with so fast. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's no telling. Everything jades everything. What you do is jaded by your beliefs, by the values that you hold, the consideration that you have for others as individuals or lack thereof. All of that fits like a glove. And I'm telling you right now, I look at this and see they're going to tell a hell of a story. I mean, it's going to be interesting. We're moving on to the initial study, but before we do, folks, let me ask you, have you seen this? You like this stuff? This is good looking stuff, isn't it? We're on the half hour. Let me go ahead and do a plug. Twidwear, baby. You know, I'm known for saying it. That's what I do. I just say it because that's what I do. And this is a catchphrase that I will demand take hold. I demand it. Listen, everything that you do with commitment. That's what you do. That's the catchphrase of the Twidwear brand. And while I'm at it, I think here I'll land. I'm going to go ahead and do what I got to do. Look, man, that's Twidwear, man. This is the Doug Rice Show brought to you by Twidwear. I want you to do me a favor. Go to twidwear.com. Okay, use the promo code TDRS. Understand that, you know, we're not just about dress. We also have skincare products that are above board. All right, they are designed specifically for Negro skin. Good Lord, right? Forget about that. But you know, the skincare TDRS 10% off any purchase. Also, remember we have a Twid Pack. The Twid Pack includes shoes, shirt, shorts, hoodie. Shoes, shirt, shorts, hoodie. All boxing gear. Thick apparel like this. Say Twid because that's what I do. All right. That's the plug. Okay. Also, like, subscribe, hit the share button, all the stuff that's down there. Do that as well. Thanks so much. Now on with the reading. Again, we are taking a look at the Tuskegee experiment in all its horrific glory. Let's continue. Now here's the initial study. Let's talk. In 1933, the PHS returned to Macon County. There was such a high incidence of unusual syphilitic pathology that it was felt that a study of persons with a long history of syphilis could be done. PHS physician Dr. Taliaferro Clark devised a study that would provide data on how syphilis differed in the Negro versus the white. Now, wait, remember the question I asked. See, I'm still, you know, a little bit miffed here. You're trying to convince me that you give a damn about Negro life. I mean, they tried to use the healthcare system to abuse Negroes. They wanted to lose Negroes. They just wanted to, you know, they just wanted to do away with us. And so I find it real suspicious that they would be less vicious than normal and think that they care. I think they cared about it comparative to how white men were affected. You know, poor black and poor white can be economically connected, but again, that reminds me of the upper verse. I'm gonna say it again, no matter how terse. We lived, they died. I don't know if this is truth or maybe they lied. I don't know if they cared about us. I think they cared more of how we survived. All right, I'm stopping. Yes, I'm stopping. Here we go. Whatever. The initial plan was to identify people who had syphilis for a long time, examine them, and record physical and laboratory findings. Nah, folks, these folks were looking for something else. That's all right. Let's go. Yeah, okay. The original project, as planned, would last less than a year. And would treat those diagnosed with syphilis. There was some concern that the persons involved would not get the standard 18 months of treatment, but it was felt that some treatment would be better than no treatment. No, treatment to the end, to fulfillment. Let's not pretend. Good Lord, some speculated that at least these people would be rendered uninfections to others. Okay, well, that's good. The PHS officers went to the all-black Andrew Hospital at the Tuskegee Institute to enlist support. The principal of the institute and the director of the hospital, both black men, enthusiastically agreed to support the project. Of course they did. What are you talking about? Because they saw dollars and it made sense to them. Come on. Tuskegee and Andrew Hospital would be paid to provide medical space, as well as laboratory and radiological support to the study. This would also be a beneficial learning experience for the young black medical interns at Andrew Hospital. Tuskegee would provide hospitalization when necessary and be the site of autopsies. Oh, dear God, really? Tuskegee agreed to hire one of its nurse graduates interested in public health, Eunice Rivers, RN, to serve as data manager for the study. This was to be a study of tertiary syphilis. Late in the design phase, the study was changed to a survey of men because women having internal genitalia frequently did not know when they were infected. This study enrolled 399 men with syphilis and 201 uninfected men to serve as controls. All men were enrolled were at least 25 years old at the enrollment. Now that's the initial study, folks, all right? So that's the initial study. This isn't too long, relax, okay? That's the initial study. Now let's get into the second study, because the second study is more likely as interesting as the first. The initial survey was completed as planned in about a year. It was at this point that all therapy was terminated. Understand the second phase. Some men received as little as a month of anti-syphilitic therapy, and others received therapy for several months. It was decided that the pathology seen was so impressive that PHS physicians would return annually to follow the course of these patients, and did so for 3 decades, to assess men at so-called roundups. Rivers, whose employment was eventually transferred to the U.S. Public Health Service, was entrusted to keep track of the study subjects to assure that as few as possible were lost to follow-up. The men in this trial participated voluntarily, and most continued coming to roundups, believing there was value in the annual physical examinations. However, there's no evidence that any diagnosed illnesses were treated. Vitamins, tonic, and aspirin may have been given to some men who complained of minor pains and ailments. Some men submitted to lumbar punctures, believing that the procedure was a therapeutic spinal shot. However, it was purely for research purposes. The morbidity associated with these spinal shots should not be underemphasized. Indeed, it was a most terrible experience. Most men who received these shots experienced severe back pain, headache, and even temporary paralysis. Some men suffered from the results of these spinal shots for years. In the late 1930s, several men died and were not autopsied. The Milbank Fund was convinced to provide funds to the Tuskegee Institute for $50 burial stipends. Well, are you still grinning? Huh? What kind of feeling do you have? You know they did this to us, and with the pleasure of the brothers and sisters that participated, I can imagine. You know what I mean? And unknowingly, unwittingly, doing things to cause Negro men harm, feeling no remorse, no conscience, no anything. You did what you did, and that's it, right? It's why I continue to say that that Negro men, our species specifically, we're the strongest beings on this planet. And I'll say that without a goddamn hesitation. Why? Because we learn. Not only do we learn, we learn quick, okay? I can't imagine the amount of circumstances we've found ourselves in that couldn't be easily escaped by offering something men want. You know what I mean? So we have a different skew, and we have to glide and slide through this thing without being killed, without being murdered, because at the drop of a hat, so many of us would be able to just be done away like that. No questions, no cause, not even a fucking pause. So I just want you to understand what was going on with these individuals. $50 burial stipends, huh? How does that make you? How does that make you feel? Do you want to stay or do you want to leave? Do you want to stay here? You want to build roots? You maybe want to exit, maybe get a breath of fresh air, All right, let's continue on with the show. Next. All right, so where was I? In the late 1930s, right. This was a successful effort to encourage families to notify Nurse Rivers immediately upon death of the study subject so that an autopsy could be arranged. Participation of the Tuskegee Institute and its hospital decreased significantly after 1945. Although the burial stipends, some laboratory tests, x-rays, and autopsies continued to be performed by Andrew Hospital physicians into the 1960s. The Tuskegee Veterans Administration Hospital, another predominantly Black institution, also provided some support of the trial into the late 1960s. Many of the strategies we discussed today as necessary for overcoming barriers to clinical trials recruitment were pioneered in this study. Nurse Rivers would recruit patients to the trial by going to their places of work, going to barber shops, going to churches, and providing transportation. Wasn't she nice? She was the educated and respected friend who guided these men through the study. All things done to preserve the trial were quite unusual and extreme. In 1941, more than 250 of the men were less than 45 years old and draftable. The PHS, however, was able to convince the local draft board not to constrict any of these men, therefore preventing the men from being moved out of the area, diagnosed, and treated. Please keep in mind, please understand, they had the treatment for these men. They had the cure. You understand this kind of maneuver? They were simply looking to see what would happen until their demise. I don't know about you, but that almost sounds like genocide in my eyes. I don't know. That sounds some nefarious stuff. I mean, Lord have mercy. Sure is getting rough. Okay. Like, subscribe, share. This is information we need out there. All your social media platforms need to have this information. You need to get this information in front of the Negro Nation as quickly as possible. We need to know what happened to us. Don't you feel odd? Don't you feel strange? Don't you feel like your mental's rearranged? Huh? Sure you do. The effects of being a Negro in America are intense. All right, let's continue. I'm sorry. All right. Where was I? All right, so I don't even know where I was. Okay. Many of the strategies necessary. Yep, got that. In 1941. Got that, right? Diagnosed and treated. Several beliefs about this study commonly held by the public are clearly false. Many think that men in the study were infected, those running the study. Many think that the men in the study were infected by those running the study. Okay. The trial actually enrolled men who could identify a syphilitic skin lesion more than 5 years before entry. Controls who developed infection were continued in the study, and clearly some men in the study infected others during the trial. Today, many erroneous believe that these men were unaware that they were in a study. Many men bragged that they were taking part in the Nurse River study. Indeed, in Macon County, it was a social honor to be in her study, although they were informed it was obvious that those who had syphilis did not understand that they had a sexually transmitted disease. What are you talking about? Negro, please. And many in the control group did not know or believe they were healthy. However, the men were aware that they had bad blood, but did not know what that meant. They kept them ignorant. I mean, look, in 1943, the penicillin was introduced to the PHS National Anti-Syphilis campaign. Unlike previous therapies, it was clearly effective, inexpensive, and easy to administer. It is unknown who made the decision to continue the study and not treat these men. Do you hear this? 1943, penicillin was introduced into the PHS, National Anti-Syphilis Campaign. The God-dogged cure. I'm going to stop cursing to be sure. And just as easy as butter slides on the bread. You hear what this Negro said? He don't know who made the decision. But it was clearly effective, inexpensive, easy to administer. But it's unknown who made the decision to continue the study and not treat these black Negro men. The PHS did convince, rather, the local draft board. I'm sorry, I just pissed me off. I'm very, very pissed off here. The PHS did convince the local draft board to support the study by excluding participants from the draft. If drafted, a participant would be diagnosed and treated. Penicillin was used in Macon County by the PHS, but care was taken not to treat the men in the study. Dear God. You like it here? You do like it here, do you? My goodness. Local physicians, some of them black, supported the study by agreeing not to treat the men on the trial. There's no evidence that these men were informed that a cure for syphilis existed and that that decision had been made not to cure them. So there is some evidence that in the mid-1940s, some PHS officers discussed the treatment and felt that penicillin might be harmful to men with a long history of syphilis. It is unclear why the study continued for 3 decades. After the development and widespread availability of penicillin, some involved with the trial actually claimed that it was a unique opportunity to learn the natural history of syphilis and that the trial was more important than ever, given that it was an effective treatment. Still grinning? You still like this place? Now, you understand why they don't want us to read, but do you understand also they feel the need not to have this taught in their schools because they don't want to look like goddamn fools in their children's eyes, I would surmise. You know, your kids are going to come home, start asking questions? Is that what's going on in your mind there, Governor DeSantis? I mean, are you scared that your children are going to come home and start asking you questions about, I don't know, just stuff, fruit? It just, to me, it's plain to see why they don't want us to read. This is something right here. This is just what we need. Man. Even if the physicians really believed this, they were forgetting that many men in the trial had been partially treated prior to the advent of penicillin. It's obvious that they felt no obligation to the men in the trial, and they did not learn from the Nuremberg trials of the 1940s that led to the Nuremberg Code of Principles of Human Experimentation, or the many changes in how clinical research was conducted. Well, finally, you said it. It's right there, I read it. Contrary to common belief, the study was not a secret. From 1933 to 1965, the year I was born, more than a dozen peer-reviewed papers with results from the study were published in respected journals such as Public Health Reports, Archives of Internal Medicines, and the Journal of Chronic Diseases. These articles explain that the data came from a study in which a large number of black men with syphilis were being observed and not treated. What? And they just read it. I mean, wow, really? Just penicillin aplenty. And they putting it in books that we've got black men that we've allowed to just go untreated just to see what happened. Now, no, we didn't do it to white men. In fact, now that you've asked, the title of one paper was Untreated Syphilis in the Male Negro, a prospective study of the effect on life expectancy. Ironically, some of these papers have become classics and are still cited in the literature today. Nurse Rivers was the first black to be co-author in several prestigious medical journals. Few in the American medical community really questioned the study until the middle 1960s. In 65, one physician did write to the PHS to ask how this study could be performed, and his letter was not answered. In 68, the PHS even convinced a group of predominantly black physicians in Macon County to endorse the study and agree not to treat the patients and agree not to treat the black men, the Negro males that they allowed syphilis to fester within without fail, to see what would happen regarding their morbidity. Wow. It was not until a PH officer named Peter Buxton, who read a paper about the trial, raised questions about the trial. And that questions led to the trial's end. All right, so let's pause for a minute. You understand the ramifications of this? I know the point you certainly don't miss. You get it, right? You get that this went on and on and on, and there's no consideration. They just let male Negroes just walk around with syphilis untreated, and let's publish it in medical journals around the world over and over, and let's even name it in such a fashion that it connotates the fact that we've allowed specifically black men to go untreated for syphilis for years to see what happens. Still grinning? Okay, let's see. We're going to go to the end of the trial. Let's see what happens. You folks, please don't smile. I'm just joking. Let's get to it. All right, here we go. The end of the trial. After several years of questioning by Mr. Buxton, several news articles were published leading to a Senate investigation headed by Senator Edward Kennedy. The investigation forced the trial's closure in 1972. The reaction to the trial would lead to the enactment of legislation establishing the Office for Protection from Research Risks within what is now the Department of Health and Human Services, and the requirement for institutional review boards. Institutional review boards are designed to assure the trials are ethical and participants in clinical studies gave informed consent. Now, look, I would have named it something a little bit different. Establishing the Office for the Protection of Negroes from White People would have been, throw that out there, yeah. So, lawsuit was filed by the famed civil rights attorney Fred Gray against the Centers for Disease Control, of which the PHS Division of Venereal Disease had become part in the 1940s. A suit of the federal government was complicated, and it was finally settled out of court for $10 million. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's pittance. It's a dime against what the United States could have paid. But let's continue. Syphilitic men on their estates in the case of men who had died. All right, that's cool. Received up to $37,500 apiece. Big whoop. 37.5, right? Controls received up to 16,000. So the controls never had anything. So they got 16,000, never had anything. That's interesting. Survivors of the trial and some wives and children affected by syphilis also received free medical care for the remainder of their lives. Well, I'll be damned. You're giving us free medical care. Negroes don't typically get sick. So I can imagine on the books that was just a tick. Boy, they're landing on thick. Mr. Gray received $1 million fee for his legal work. Boy, that sounds a lot more than 33. No, that's less than 33%. All right. No individual associated with the trial was ever sued, prosecuted, or formally reprimanded. Not even that. Now that simple sentence, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? I mean, isn't it typical that so many just get away with it all and just the ethereal effect of it still remains, but there was never any blame and no one's set to name. Just no individuals associated with the trial was ever sued, prosecuted, or even formally reprimanded. Yeah. In May 1997, the President of the United States formally apologized to the trial participants and their families. He apologized. He said sorry. It was the federal government's first official admission of responsibility, and that inappropriate things occurred in the conduct of the study. Inappropriate things occurred. 7 survivors of the trial were alive at the time of the apology. He apologized, folks. Do you know the weight and brevity, the gravity, the gravitas of an apology? It weighs about 0 and is meaningless. It has absolutely no effect on what occurred. To hell with your apology, even back then. Yeah, you heard. Serious. Did you apologize, Mr. Nixon? Who else? Oh, set 97. Did you apologize? Whoever the fuck was in there. Was it Bush? You apologize? The first time you ever apologized because, and I quote, inappropriate things occurred at the time of the Tuskegee study regarding syphilis in the Negro male gone untreated for decades. All right, let's continue. Lessons to learn. Here we go. Alfred North Whitehead once said, those who do not understand history are doomed to repeat it. The lessons of the United States public health study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male include the dangers of paternalism, arrogance, blind loyalty, and misuse of science. Many have judged the PHS officers who ran the trial as evil racists. Well, they were black, but we'll see. I don't know. Those who initially started the trial had actually had reputations as committed public health physicians with commitment and concern regarding the health of Negroes. They argued in scientific papers that the high prevalence rates of syphilis among blacks were not due to inherent racial susceptibility. But let me stop right here before he gets into this, because we're not talking about that. That's not what you need to be about. That's not the deal. That's not how Negroes feel. Please, white folks, get real. Don't you know what this is about? This is about informed consent. That's what this is about. This is about informed consent for the Negro male. Our ignorance is what they built this upon. I don't care about the commitment to health officials and those that administered this heinous act upon Negroes. I'm talking about just informed consent. All right, I'm sorry, let's go. I judge them harshly. I think they're evil racists, but let's move forward. Yeah, they argued in scientific papers, right? I dig that. They also helped many of the Black Andrew Hospital interns receive, hold on, I want to make sure I've read everything right, more socioeconomic. They also helped many receive postgraduate training at elite, traditionally all white institutions. Oh, joy for them. Right? Indeed, several were critics of the poverty and circumstance of blacks in the South. It is conceivable that these physicians somehow fooled themselves into believing that they were doing a service to blacks as a whole by running this study. The concept of race medicine remains with us. Unfortunately, it can still lead us to scientific tragedies and social injustice. It is interesting that some current literature, medical and lay, and legislation assume the old race medicine premise that blacks are biologically different from whites, who are biologically different from Asians, etc. In fact, scientists frequently publish rates by race or ethnicity, encouraging many to quickly conclude that if a disease occurs more frequently in or appears to be more deadly in a particular race or ethnic group, it must be because of inherent biological or genetic differences. Furthermore, outcomes are often attributed to race when modifiable factors such as culture or socioeconomic status might be the major underlying cause. The tragedy of the study can be attributed in large part to the arrogance and paternalism of the people running the study. Arrogance prevented complete peer review, which might have prevented the study from being started, and even intermittent peer review by persons concerned with the safety of the men in the trial certainly would have stopped it with the advent of penicillin. Furthermore, there were a number of black physicians and laboratory technicians assisting in the conduct of this trial, especially in the early years, but even into the 1960s. Some may even have been guilty of believing that they were better than the uneducated poor blacks entering this trial. Classism among blacks did and unfortunately still does exist. Some blacks and some whites were likely guilty of failing to understand and learn all about the trial on which they were working. Much was made of Rivers' participation. She retired from the study in 1965, came back as a consultant every year until its termination. From interviews and depositions given by Rivers after the trial was stopped, it appears that she was a sincere woman who cared about the men and the study and just did not understand. PHS officers in the 1950s and 1960s were guilty of not rigorously assessing the value of the trial and clearly did not consider its ethics. They allowed the trial to become entrenched in the PHS bureaucracy and felt no sense of personal responsibility. Furthermore, government personnel may not have questioned the trial because it was historically associated with several distinguished PHS officers. Thomas Perrin, who had gone on to become Surgeon General, and John R. Heller, who became head of what would become the National Cancer Institute. One person with a profound respect for the truth could have, and eventually did, stop this tragedy. Additionally, going beyond merely informing participants to instructing participants about the study and receiving truly informed consent might also have prevented this tragedy. This lesson is still valid today for those of us involved in routine clinical practice and trials. In our obligation, not to just inform our participants, but to go beyond and assure that our patients fully understand the study. There's also the obligation that we ourselves must fully comprehend any subject matter before we teach or advocate it. As more sophisticated screening, diagnostic, and treatment technologies are developed, it must be realized the errors of this study can and do occur today. Those of us who counsel patients, whether lay health advocates, nurses, or physicians, have a personal responsibility to be fully informed and an obligation to fully inform. We must have a commitment to tell our patients the truth. The urge to oversimplify a complicated concept and deny individuals information that will allow them to make informed decisions affecting their lives is still frequent. And there we have it, folks. There is the full read. This again, the study of untreated syphilis in the Negro Male, the Tuskegee experiment. This clinical investigation was brought to you by Otis W. Broadley. And I'm going to say again that Otis was a brother. All right. I do appreciate you being here. I appreciate all that you do. This is the Doug Rice Show, and I thank you for rolling through. 9:04. I like that we got out of here on time. I hope you guys enjoyed my rhyme. And if you did, please shop at Twid. Twidware. Twidware.com. He is the sponsor of this show, and you can use TDRS to get 10% off, just so you know. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate you guys being here. Please like, subscribe, do all the things you need to do. But also go to Twidware too, because, you know, Twidware is right there, man. He's a pretty good dude, and he knows what he's doing too. I'll tell you what. All right, folks, there he is. Look, I'm going to get out of here. You guys get down to your biz. I hope you had a good time. I hope you enjoyed the rhyme. I hope you come back again sometime. All right, folks. Hey, you know what I say, right? No reason to grin. That's the original sin. You need to hear this. You're going to get out there, and you're going to be in public places. Do me a favor, Negroes. Get that goddamn grin off your faces. Yeah, I said it, because that's what I do. Oh, I did it. I worked it in. Yeah, I did. Okay. Have a good one.